I still remember the smell of magnolias the day I married Raymond Jackson. June 15, 2008. The happiest day of my life, or so I thought. I was 29 years old, wearing my mama's pearl earrings and a dress I had saved up for 2 years to buy. When I walked down the aisle and saw Raymond waiting for me with tears in his eyes, I thought I had found my forever. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that his mother, Dolores Jackson, had already decided I wasn't good enough for her son. And she would spend the next 15 years of my life making sure everyone around me knew it too. My name is Patricia Ann Thompson Jackson. I'm 44 years old now, and I'm about to tell you a story that I've kept locked inside my chest like a secret I was too ashamed to share. But shame has a way of rotting you from the inside out, and I'm tired of carrying poison that was never mine to begin with. So let me take you back. Let me show you what it's like to be slowly erased from your own life by someone who smiles in your face while whispering venom in everyone else's ear. The first time I met Dolores Jackson, she looked me up and down like I was a stain on her furniture. Raymond had been so excited to introduce us. "Mama, this is Patricia. The woman I've been telling you about." I extended my hand with my biggest smile, the smile my own mama taught me to wear when meeting elders, the smile that said I was raised right, that I knew my manners, that I was worthy of being loved by her son. Dolores didn't take my hand. She just looked at it, then looked at me, then turned to Raymond and said, "She's darker than I expected." The words hit me like a slap, but I kept my smile. I told myself she didn't mean it the way it sounded. I told myself she was just old-fashioned, from a different generation. I told myself that once she got to know me, really know me, she would see that I loved her son with my whole heart. That was my first mistake. Giving her the benefit of the doubt when she had already shown me exactly who she was. Raymond apologized later that night, holding me while I cried in his apartment. "That's just how Mama is," he said. "She's protective of me. She'll warm up to you, I promise." But Dolores Jackson never warmed up to me. She just got better at hiding her coldness behind a mask of Southern charm. The wedding planning was a nightmare I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Every decision I made, Dolores had something to say about it. The venue I chose was too cheap. The flowers I picked were tacky. The dress I fell in love with was too revealing for a Christian ceremony. And somehow, she always managed to say these things when Raymond wasn't in the room, when it was just the two of us, woman to woman. When I tried to tell Raymond what was happening, he looked at me with confusion in his eyes. "Mama?" She told me she loved the venue. She said the flowers were beautiful. I stared at him, my mouth open, wondering if I was losing my mind. "Raymond," she told me to my face that the flowers looked like something from a gas station funeral. He laughed. Actually laughed. "Baby, you must have misheard her. Mama wouldn't say something like that. She's just excited about the wedding. Maybe you're stressed and reading into things." That was the beginning of the gaslighting. I just didn't know it had a name back then. The wedding itself was beautiful, despite everything. My mama walked me down the aisle since my daddy had passed when I was 12. My sister Denise was my maid of honor. Raymond cried when he saw me, and for one perfect moment, I forgot about Dolores and her cutting remarks. For one perfect moment, I believed that love would be enough. But even on my wedding day, Dolores found a way to remind me of my place. During the reception, she gave a toast. Everyone gathered around, champagne glasses raised, ready to celebrate the new couple. Dolores stood up in her cream-colored suit, a color that every Southern woman knows you don't wear to someone else's wedding, and smiled at the crowd. "I want to welcome Patricia to our family," she said, her voice dripping with sweetness that I knew was poison. "Raymond is my only son, my heart, my everything. And I know that Patricia will do her best to make him happy. Do her best. Not will make him happy. Not I'm so blessed to have her as a daughter. Just do her best, like I was a barely qualified candidate being given a chance I didn't deserve." My mama caught my eye across the room. She knew. She saw right through Dolores the way mothers do, the way women do when they recognize a snake in the grass. But what could she say? It was my wedding day. We were supposed to be celebrating. So I smiled. I raised my glass. I pretended I didn't notice the way Dolores's friends looked at me with pity, like they already knew something I didn't. The first year of marriage was hard, but I thought that was normal. Raymond and I were learning to live together, building our life, figuring out how to be partners instead of just dating. What wasn't normal was how often Dolores showed up unannounced. She had a key to our apartment, a key Raymond had given her for emergencies. But somehow, every emergency happened to coincide with dinner time, or Sunday morning, or the one night a week Raymond and I had set aside for just the two of us. I was in the neighborhood, she would say, breezing through the door without knocking. I brought some of Raymond's favorite pot roast. I know Patricia tries, but she never quite gets it right. She never quite gets it right. That became Dolores's favorite phrase when talking about me. My cooking wasn't quite right. My cleaning wasn't quite right. The way I folded Raymond's shirts, the way I organized his closet, the way I decorated our home, nothing was ever quite right. And slowly, insidiously, Raymond started to agree with her. Baby, maybe you could try Mama's recipe for the roast. Just to see if I like it better. Patricia, Mama noticed the house was a little dusty when she came by. Maybe you could pay more attention to the corners. My mother thinks maybe you should dress up more when we go to church. You know, make more of an effort. I was being erased, one criticism at a time. And the worst part? Raymond didn't even see what was happening. He loved his mother. He trusted her completely. And she used that love and trust like a weapon aimed directly at my heart. When I got pregnant with our first child, I thought things might change. Surely, I told myself, Dolores would soften when she became a grandmother. Surely the arrival of a baby would bring us together as a family. I announced my pregnancy at Sunday dinner, my hands shaking with excitement as I held up the positive test. Raymond jumped out of his chair and swept me into his arms, laughing and crying at the same time. Dolores sat perfectly still. Well, she said after a long moment, I hope this one takes after our side of the family. Our side. Like my genes were something shameful to be bred out. Like my family, my hardworking, loving, beautiful family, was somehow less than hers. Raymond didn't hear it. Or maybe he didn't want to hear it. Mama's just surprised, he said later that night. She'll come around. But Dolores didn't come around. She came closer, close enough to sink her claws deep into my pregnancy, my delivery, my first months as a mother. She was there when I went into labor, insisting on being in the delivery room even though I only wanted Raymond. I've given birth before, she said with that sweet poison smile. You'll need my guidance. She was there when I tried to breastfeed, watching me struggle with cracked nipples and a baby who wouldn't latch, making comments about how formula was probably better anyway. Your milk is probably thin, she said. The baby looks hungry. Let me get a bottle. She was there when I cried from exhaustion, from hormones, from the overwhelming weight of new motherhood, and instead of offering comfort, she offered judgment. Some women just aren't natural mothers, she told Raymond when she thought I couldn't hear. You might need to step up, son. She can't handle this on her own. My daughter was born on March 3, 2010. We named her Michelle, after my grandmother who had passed the year before. She was perfect, 7 pounds, 3 ounces, with her father's eyes and my mother's smile. And from the moment Michelle entered this world, Dolores began a campaign to turn her against me. It started small, so small that I didn't notice it at first. Little comments here and there, seeds planted in my baby's soft mind. Grandma's house is more fun than boring old home, isn't it? Grandma lets you have cookies before dinner. Mama's so strict, isn't she? When you're older, you can come live with Grandma. Wouldn't that be nice? By the time Michelle was 5 years old, she was asking why she couldn't just live at Grandma's house all the time. By the time she was 8, she was running to Dolores every time I tried to discipline her. By the time she was 12, she looked at me with something close to contempt, a contempt I hadn't taught her, a contempt that had been carefully, methodically planted in her heart by a woman who smiled in my face and twisted knives in my back. The worst part wasn't the big betrayals. It was the small ones. The thousands of tiny cuts that bled me dry over 15 years. It was the way Dolores would plan family events on days she knew I had to work, then act surprised when I couldn't attend. "Oh, Patricia couldn't make it again? What a shame. She's always so busy with her little job." It was the way she would take Michelle shopping for school clothes without inviting me, then bring her home in outfits I could never afford. I just wanted my grandbaby to have nice things. "You don't mind, do you?" It was the way she would call Raymond at night, crying about how lonely she was, how hard it was being a widow, how she just needed her son to come hold her hand. And Raymond would go, every single time, leaving me alone in our bed while he rushed to his mother's side. It was the way she poisoned every relationship I had, with Raymond's sisters, with his aunts, with his cousins. Somehow, everyone in that family came to believe that I was cold, distant, difficult. They believed I was jealous of Dolores. They believed I was trying to keep Raymond away from his family. They believed I was the villain in a story that had been written about me without my knowledge or consent. And when I tried to defend myself, when I tried to explain what was really happening, they looked at me with pity. "Poor Patricia," they seemed to say. So paranoid. So insecure. So determined to make sweet Dolores into a monster. My second daughter, Grace, was born in 2013. By then, I was so beaten down that I barely had the strength to protect her from what I knew was coming. But I tried. Lord knows I tried. I set boundaries. I limited visits to Dolores's house. I monitored phone calls and tried to intercept the poison before it could reach my baby's ears. And Dolores declared war. She called Raymond crying. "Patricia won't let me see my grandchildren. She's keeping them from me. What kind of mother does that?" She called her church friends and told them I was mentally unstable, that I had threatened her, that she feared for the children's safety. She called Child Protective Services. I will never forget the day those social workers showed up at my door. The humiliation of having strangers walk through my house, check my refrigerator, ask my children if mommy ever hurt them. The terror of wondering if they would take my babies away based on lies told by a woman who was supposed to be family. The investigation was closed within a week. There was nothing to find because there was nothing wrong with my home or my parenting. But the damage was done. Raymond looked at me differently after that, like maybe his mother wasn't entirely wrong, like maybe there was something unstable about me after all. That was the night I thought about leaving. I sat in my car in the driveway, engine running, bags packed, children sleeping in the house behind me. I could go to my mama's place in Alabama. I could start over. I could escape. But then I thought about what that would mean. Leaving Raymond, who despite everything, I still loved. Leaving my home, my community, my church. Letting Dolores win, letting her drive me out of my own family like she had been trying to do for years. So I stayed. I unpacked my bags. I went back inside. And I survived another 10 years of quiet warfare. The turning point came when Michelle announced her engagement. She was 23 years old, fresh out of college, madly in love with a young man named David who came from a good family and treated her like she hung the moon. I was happy for her, genuinely, truly happy, even though our relationship had been strained for years. "Mama," she said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table, "I want to ask you something." I braced myself. After years of Dolores whispering in her ear, I never knew what to expect from my oldest daughter. Every conversation felt like walking through a minefield. "Will you help me plan the wedding?" I stared at her, sure I had misheard. "You want my help?" Michelle looked down at her hands. "I know we haven't always been, close. I know I've been difficult. But you're my mother. I want you to be part of this. For the first time in years, I let myself hope. Maybe this was the beginning of healing. Maybe Michelle was finally seeing through the lies that had poisoned her childhood. Maybe God was giving us another chance. I should have known better. I should have known that Dolores would never let me have this moment without trying to destroy it. The wedding planning brought out the worst in everyone. Dolores inserted herself into every decision, just like she had with my own wedding 15 years before. But this time, I wasn't a naive bride too polite to push back. This time, I had learned to recognize her games. When she tried to change the venue without consulting Michelle, I spoke up. When she tried to add 50 of her own friends to the guest list, I pushed back. When she tried to convince Michelle to wear a dress that Dolores had picked out instead of the one Michelle had fallen in love with, I held my ground. And Dolores didn't like it. Not one bit. The confrontation happened 3 weeks before the wedding. We were at Dolores's house for a planning meeting that turned into an ambush. Patricia, dear, Dolores said, her voice dripping with that familiar sweetness, I think we need to talk about your role in this wedding. I looked around the room. Raymond's sisters were there, his aunts, his cousins, all the family members who had believed Dolores's lies about me for 15 years. Michelle sat in the corner, looking uncomfortable. My role? I asked carefully. You've been very involved. And I think it might be overwhelming for Michelle. Perhaps it would be better if you took a step back. Let the rest of us handle things. I felt the old familiar shame rising in my chest, the shame of being judged, the shame of being found wanting, the shame of never being quite right. But something was different this time. Something had shifted. Maybe it was the fact that my daughter was getting married and I refused to miss this milestone the way I had missed so many others. Maybe it was the accumulation of 15 years of swallowed words finally pushing their way up my throat. Maybe it was just time. No, I said. The room went silent. No? Dolores repeated, her eyes narrowing. No, I'm not stepping back. Michelle asked me to help plan this wedding, and I'm going to help plan this wedding. I'm her mother, Dolores. Her mother. And I've let you push me aside for too long. What happened next was chaos. Dolores started crying, her signature move, the tears that had always made Raymond rush to her defense. Raymond's sisters began talking over each other, defending their mother, attacking me for being disrespectful. Raymond himself looked torn, caught between the woman who raised him and the woman he had promised to love. But Michelle, my Michelle, who had spent her whole life believing her grandmother over me, Michelle stood up. Stop, she said, her voice quiet but firm. All of you, just stop. Everyone turned to look at her. Grandma, I love you. But Mama is right. She's my mother. And I want her involved in my wedding. Dolores's tears dried up instantly. Michelle, sweetheart, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Michelle walked over and stood next to me, her hand finding mine. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. A lot of remembering. And some things are starting to make sense that didn't make sense before. She squeezed my hand, and I felt tears streaming down my face. My daughter. My baby girl. Finally seeing the truth. The wedding was beautiful. It was held at a little white church outside of town, surrounded by magnolia trees that reminded me of my own wedding day 16 years before. Michelle was radiant in the dress she had chosen, not her grandmother's choice, but her own. David cried when he saw her walk down the aisle. I sat in the front row, next to Raymond, my heart so full I thought it might burst. But the most beautiful moment, the moment I will carry with me for the rest of my life, came after the ceremony. Pastor Williams, who had known our family for 30 years, stood up to give a blessing before the reception began. But instead of the usual words, he held up a letter. Before we celebrate, he said, his voice carrying through the reception hall, the bride has asked me to read something. Michelle wrote this letter to her mother, and she wanted everyone here to hear it. I looked at Michelle, confused. She smiled at me through her tears and nodded. Pastor Williams began to read. To my mother, Patricia. For most of my life, I believed a story about you that wasn't true. I believed you were cold when you were actually protecting yourself. I believed you were jealous when you were actually fighting for your place in your own family. I believed you were the villain when you were actually the victim. I know now who told me those stories. I know now why she told them. And I know now how much pain you've carried all these years, pain that I added to, pain that I caused because I believed lies instead of looking at what was right in front of me. Mama, you never stopped loving me. Even when I pushed you away. Even when I said terrible things. Even when I ran to Grandma's house and refused to come home. You never stopped showing up for me, fighting for me, praying for me. I found something last month. A box in Grandma's closet full of letters you had written to me over the years that she had intercepted. Birthday cards I never received. Notes of encouragement that never reached me. 15 years of your love, hidden away like something shameful. That's when I understood. That's when everything became clear. Grandma, I know you're listening. I love you, but what you did was wrong. You tried to steal my mother from me. You tried to make me believe that the woman who gave me life was my enemy. And for a long time, you succeeded. But not anymore. Mama, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every harsh word, every eye roll, every time I made you feel like you weren't enough. You were always enough. You were always my mother. And from this day forward, I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth. I love you, Mama. Today and forever. Your daughter, Michelle. The silence in that reception hall was deafening. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. Tears were pouring down my face, 15 years of pain and loneliness and doubt washing away with every word my daughter had written. I looked across the room at Dolores. Her face was pale, her mouth hanging open. For the first time in 15 years, she had no mask to hide behind. Everyone, her children, her grandchildren, her church friends, everyone was looking at her with new eyes. And then Michelle was there, kneeling beside me, her white dress pooling on the floor as she took my hands in hers. I'm sorry, Mama, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I pulled her into my arms and held her the way I had held her when she was small, before the poison took root, before the lies built walls between us. I held my daughter and I cried, not tears of pain, but tears of release. Tears of healing. Tears of a mother finally being seen. What happened after that day isn't a simple story. Life never is. Raymond and I had hard conversations, the hardest of our marriage. He had to face the truth about his mother, about the ways he had enabled her, about the times he had chosen her over me. It wasn't easy for him. The mother he loved wasn't the mother she had pretended to be. Dolores tried to deny everything, of course. She claimed the letters were forgeries. She claimed Michelle had been manipulated. She played the victim with an actress's skill, crying to anyone who would listen about how her family had turned against her. But the letters were real. The evidence was undeniable. And one by one, the people who had believed her lies began to see the truth. Raymond's sisters apologized to me, awkward, uncomfortable apologies that didn't erase 15 years of exclusion, but at least acknowledged it. His aunts and cousins slowly started including me in family gatherings again. The wall that had surrounded me for so long began to crumble. As for Dolores, I haven't seen her in 6 months. She's become a ghost at the edges of our family, showing up occasionally to events where she sits alone in corners and watches with bitter eyes. I don't hate her, I don't have the energy for hate anymore. But I also don't trust her, and I never will. Michelle and I are rebuilding our relationship one conversation at a time. It's slow work. 15 years of damage doesn't heal overnight. But we're trying, both of us, and that's more than I dared to hope for. Grace, my youngest, never fell as deep under her grandmother's spell. She always seemed to see through Dolores in a way her sister couldn't. Now, at 11 years old, she's my fiercest defender, my little warrior who says that's my mama you're talking about whenever anyone speaks ill of me. And Raymond, my husband, the man I almost left 100 times, Raymond holds me every night and apologizes for what he didn't see. He's in therapy now, working through his own relationship with his mother, learning to recognize the manipulation he grew up swimming in like a fish that doesn't know it's wet. I don't know if our marriage will survive everything we've been through. Some days I think it will. Other days I'm not so sure. But I know that I'm not carrying this weight alone anymore. I know that the truth is finally out. And I know that whatever happens next, I will face it standing up, not crawling on my knees. If you're watching this, if you're still with me after all these words, I want to leave you with something. Maybe you're living your own version of my story right now. Maybe there's a Dolores in your life, a mother-in-law, a sister, a friend, a parent, who has made you feel crazy for seeing what's right in front of your face. Maybe you've been told you're too sensitive, too paranoid, too difficult, when all you're doing is recognizing poison for what it is. I want you to know, you are not crazy. What you see is real. And one day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day, the truth will come out. It always does. In the meantime, hold on. Hold on to yourself, to your truth, to the voice inside you that knows what's right even when everyone around you is trying to convince you otherwise. That voice is your power. That voice is your salvation. That voice is God speaking to you in the silence, telling you that you are worthy of love and respect and dignity. Don't let anyone take that from you. Don't let them erase you from your own life. You are here for a reason. You matter. Your story matters. And when your moment of truth comes, and it will come, I promise you it will, stand up straight. Lift your head. And let the world see who you really are. My name is Patricia N. Thompson Jackson. I'm 44 years old. For 15 years, I was silenced, sidelined, and slowly erased by a woman who was supposed to be family. But I'm not silent anymore. Lord, thank you for bringing me through. Thank you for my daughters, for my healing, for the truth that finally set us free. And for everyone out there still fighting their own battles, give them strength. Give them hope. Give them their own moment of truth. Amen.